You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
Welcome to Ask Margaret from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. Solving the parenting question of the week so you don't have to. Guys, this question of the week comes from Mandy. And Mandy's question is, what do you do when your preschooler points to a stranger in public and makes a loud, quote, observation, unquote, about them? Example, why does that man have no hair? Why does that lady have a big tummy? Why is that person a different color than me? And then an embarrassed face emoji. Mandy, we understand why you have the embarrassed face emoji, but we've been there. Raise your hand, guys, unless you're driving a car, if you've been there with Mandy. Kids are great observers, which makes them fun to be with, but makes it super, super awkward in public. So my advice to Mandy and to myself and to everyone is have these conversations early with your kids. This is a great thing to find books about for 2 and 3-year-olds. You know, like people come in different shapes and sizes. People look different from each other. People sometimes have different issues with their body. Some people are in wheelchairs. Some people walk with a cane. Some people's faces look different than other people's. And have those conversations early and talk to your kids about, like, we can notice differences in people, but we don't talk out loud about differences or the way that people look because it might hurt their feelings. So that when these things come up, which they will, you have a shorthand to deal with it. Remember how we've talked about how we don't point at people, how we don't say things about people's appearances in public. That might hurt their feelings, and we wouldn't want to do that, because this is the classic, like, funny kid story of, like, oh my gosh, I had a girl, little kindergartner, who was friends with my kindergartner. She looked right at me, at my face, and she said, wow, you look much too old to have a kid in kindergarten. And I mean, I am 10 years older than a lot of the other moms, and her mom was completely mortified. And I was just laughing, and I was like, you know what, kid, you're not wrong. So funny story, but we've also all been in situations where our kids may have said something that, like, was really hurtful to someone. Like, gosh, why is that lady so fat? Like, obviously you've ruined that person's day, and your kid, who's not trying to be mean, it's just made for an awkward situation. So this can go in the way of, like, oh, you're going to be laughing about it for a long time. You won't believe what my kid said. But it can also go in the other direction, which is like, I'm waking up at 3:00 in the morning with the bad feeling because my kid said something that really hurt another human being, and I hate the way that feels. It's going to happen. You can be calm about it. Most people, if you handle it really frankly, like one of my kids pointed at someone in a museum once, why doesn't that person have a leg? And I just said, and the other person was close enough by to hear it, I kind of gave them an apologetic nod. And I said, you know, we don't point out differences about the way that people look in public. I'm not sure why that person doesn't have a leg, but people look really different all the time. We're always going to see people who look different. And so we don't point that out in public, and I'm not sure. And I know people have had the experience where the person will come over and share with them, like, actually, I was in an accident, and they don't mind. But it's not fair to ask people to constantly explain their looks to your children. So also, another thing I would say about this is open the door in your own house for conversation. So my kids have often come to me and said, you know, there's a boy in my school who has something strange about his hand or whatever. I'm completely making this up. This is not an actual example, but I'm trying to sort of judge the examples I have. Kid in my class who's missing a finger on their hand. Like, oh yeah, something must have happened. Sometimes people are born that way. Some people have accidents. And kids are probably going to ask about those things. And it's fine. I don't want to make it a secretive thing of, like, we have to put blinders on and pretend that everyone looks exactly the same. It's okay to be curious about why people look different. It's just not okay to point and ask loudly about it in public, because that has the potential to hurt that other person, and that's not something we ever want to do. Another thing I do, especially, I don't do it anymore because my kids are older and they kind of get it now, but when my kids were little, I tended to kind of scan crowds a little bit. Like if we were at a fair or any kind of gathering or party, and I would see someone, we were once at a place where I saw someone with a real facial difference. And I said, guys, there's someone here who looks a little different than other people. And I just want to remind you that that's not something we talk about in public. And so we don't want to point and we don't want to ask about it out loud. We can talk about it later when we get home if you want to. And we did. And the kid said, oh, that guy looked so different. What was going on with him? And I said, I'm not really sure, but here are certain things that happen. And it's fine to discuss the way that people look in a really kind way, but it's just getting away from the thing of like pointing, laughing, and being curious, which comes very naturally to children. Listen, when kids see something that looks really different, their reaction often is to laugh. And that's natural. So they're not evil kids, but it's just something we want to control so that we're not going through the world like hurting other people's feelings. So I'm saying, guys, talk about this early. Read some books about it. Talk about differences. Talk about what things we talk about in public. But then don't be afraid to leave the door open for conversations that are about like, hey, why do we look different? And those conversations are perfectly safe and okay. You just teach the kids the difference. It's like outside voice and inside voice. And outside voice does not involve ever pointing, laughing, or loudly pointing out people's differences. But once we're back inside, it's completely fine to ask curious questions about why people look different. Mandy, I hope I solved it for you. And if you have a question for me or for Amy, you can send them to us on our Facebook page through our Facebook group. You can send them on Twitter, Instagram, or you can email us info@whatfreshhellpodcast.com. Please do, and maybe one of us will be solving your problem. Thanks for listening.